I'm Reagan. I may not be here next week, depending on the state tournament, but I don't see us going that far, so I will try and be here next Wednesday.
And Thursday.
And Thursday. Okay, can I? Okay.
So, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay. So, we oppose this House supports a federal NIL law for college athletes. In today's round, we will provide a counter model to reap the benefits of the opponent's case while avoiding all the disadvantages. With our counter model, we propose that high school athletes should be able to surpass the collegiate level and go straight to the pros. Within the government's plan, we see that colleges will lose most of their revenue only to be able to pay athletes almost $3.33 an hour. When you look to our counter model, not only does the NCAA get to keep their revenue, which keeps the benefits of scholarships, athlete insurance, and get free room and board, etc., which allows the people who needs the college level to flourish, while the athletes that are qualifying can make money off of their name while succeeding in professional leagues. As we look at past examples like LeBron James and Steph Curry, who both went straight to the NBA right out of high school, both players made over $4 million their first year. Not only has this been successful for men, but women as well. Look at Candace Parker, who went straight into the WNBA, making over $500,000 of the $10 million budget. For the structure of the round, we're going to define a few key terms. To start off, we're going to define this House as the United States. Supports as to agree with or approve. NIL law, which is the name, image, and likeness are the three elements that make up right of publicity, a legal concept used to prevent or allow the use of an individual to promote a product or service. The NCAA currently caps athlete compensation at the cost of attendance, but NIL laws enable college athletes to engage in private endorsements and deals for monetary compensation, with no intervention by institutions like the NCAA, and college athletes, which are student athletes under the NCAA criteria. For framework of this round, we want to propose cost-benefit analysis. We want our educator to approach the arguments brought forward and weigh the potential positive impacts of a world with and without the resolution. Which side proves that their position proves more benefits with less associated costs should win the debate. Burden number one is the burden of the affirmative is to show that a federal NIL law would significantly help student athletes, the NCAA, and the sport they play. The second burden today is that the burden of the opposition is to show that a federal NIL law would significantly harm student athletes, the NCAA, and the sport they play. With substantive one, it hurts non-revenue sports or competitiveness. In a 2021 review completed by the University of Cincinnati, they looked at the economic impact of college sports. Most people look at the massive amounts of money that the NCAA makes. It is reported to pull in about $1 billion per year. The biggest question people have is why aren't players receiving any of this money directly? The answer is that 90% of the revenue is reportedly going back to member schools, and by proxy, the student athletes through funding of non-revenue generating sports and divisions, scholarship funds, catastrophic injury insurance, student assistance funds, etc. The report further states that if the NCAA profits were divided amongst the almost 500K student athletes, that they would only receive about $2,000 each year. This is extremely problematic because when we look at the massive amount of time that is spent devoted to this sport program, this quickly becomes laughable. The Marriott Student Review in January of last year found that student athletes spend on average of 50 hours a week.
Chloe?
Yes.
So if these players aren't getting paid, what benefits are they gaining for playing and competing for these colleges?
They're gaining the benefit of being able to play in the sport that they love, which is what they signed up for. I'm going to continue with mandatory team activities during the season. A study conducted by the College Sport Research Institute found that a student athlete is 23% less likely to graduate compared to a non-athlete. What this means is that if we took the profit made by the NCAA and spread it to each athlete and lowballed a 3-month season, that each student would be making about $3.33 an hour. In a world where the government's position is passed, we would see a massive amount of negative impacts simply so we can pay students $3.30 an hour.
Point of information.
Yes.
How much of that $1 billion that they make each year comes from men's basketball?
I don't know that. A dramatic decrease. Some of the negative impacts include a dramatic decrease in the amount of scholarships offered, which would disproportionately impact people of color and women. This would also force all student athletes to pay higher tuition and room and board costs, ultimately meaning less money in their pocket for the exact same circumstances. There would be a huge decrease in the amount of total sports programs offered. Smaller, less popular sports would be eliminated for men and women in order to free up funds for larger, more popular programs. The students would still face the exact same time burdens given any week. They would still be forced to attend 50-plus hours of practice, games, and meetings on top of their school workload. There wouldn't be any time for outside employment. This is not going to be a net benefit in any area of the student's life to get $3.33 an hour. The total is about $660 per month before taxes, before the cost of tuition, without scholarships, before providing their own insurance, and before the cost of room and board without scholarships on that point.
Yeah, so you list all these negative things. Which one of those things are going to change with your counter model? Like, will they still have 50 hours of practice? Will they still have to pay tuition and room and board? Like, what's going to change with your counter model?
Well, we can see that under the counter model, they're actually getting paid for the activities and the things that they're participating in, rather than just getting paid a small amount of $3.33, where we're seeing that an increase of pay would probably motivate them to do these things and do them better than before. As you can see, the choice is clear. Allowing student athletes to get paid is going to cause a massive amount of problems without actually helping anyone at all. In 2020, ESPN reported on a memo signed by more than a dozen national associates in various sports, including hockey, soccer, tennis, golf, swimming, and gymnastics, outlining significant concerns about effects of allowing athletes to profit for use of their names, images, and likenesses. This is far more simply the bigger basketball and football programs circling the wagons to protect themselves. This is a persuasive stance among the sports community that NIL changes are going to hurt small programs and most athletes. The concerns include reduced resources for a lower profile program. With less money to spend around you will see a huge impact on program that isn't cut outright. Title IX means that any smaller, underperforming, or unpopular women's program will likely not only result in their scholarship money and their scholarship program being cut, but the associated men's program being tossed out as well. Less scholarship money means that you will not be able to acquire higher level talent for your program, which often brings in the utility athletes who would work around the more skilled scholarship athletes. You would also see the risk of crowdfunding recruiting for boosters to buy talent for a competitive advantage. While super teams do exist today, their existence is vastly overhyped, and we actually currently have a very competitive field. In the past 20 years, there have been 13 individual schools who have won the football national championship. In the past 20 years, there have been 12 individual schools who have won the football national championship. This means that a change will allow recruitment to start putting together super teams who will dominate the sport. This will hurt overall sales of tickets, jerseys, etc., and would even lead to less name recognition after college than we currently see. We need an equitable system where the most amount of schools are competitive in any given year, and it isn't always going to be the same 3 to 4 teams that end up in finals every year. The memo also cites increased influence by agents. This does exist in the status quo, but it would proliferate. We can look at many of the current NIL laws in place in states like California and Colorado and see that the use of agents is mandated in a lot of new legislation. This means less money in students' pockets and also allows for more outside pressures into collegiate sports. The memo questions whether schools can effectively monitor for compliance. An NIL would open up so many new possible forms of exploitation and of student athletes that it would become almost impossible for individual programs or even the NCAA to monitor for infractions. Finally, the memo mentions how it has catastrophic impact on Olympic sports. Their position boils down to the statement, let's pump the brakes and just be really, really careful what is agreed to and what is not agreed to. Once we pass a vote for NIL, there's no turning back. If the opposition is opening reasonable doubt in your mind, then it is only reasonable to vote down this change until you can rest assured 100% that this is a change that will positively impact students, their programs, and their colleges. Any solution should take all three of these concerned parties into account and leave them in all relative position possible. Substantive 2. Throughout the history of college athleticism, there has been a long-standing bulwark against discrimination against women. To understand how this relates to the topic, we must first begin by explaining the benefits of Title IX. Ever since its conception in 1972, Title IX has laid the foundation for an equal playing field, not
That's
just for. That's gonna have to be cut bad.
Okay.
Especially
we don't
for
ha-
speech.
We don't have a third
No, I
point,
can't.
so the second speaker.
Yeah, the second speaker can take over that. We just